The border village of Ashwick smelled of rain and crushed herbs when Elandra Voss finished wrapping the last bandage of the day. She worked with careful hands, the kind that had healed hundreds of wounds over 3 quiet years, and she never once let anyone see the silver mark hidden beneath the cuff of her sleeve. It was shaped like a crescent moon split by a single line, and if the wrong person ever saw it, everything she had built would come apart. She told herself the mark meant nothing anymore. The bloodline it belonged to had been destroyed a generation ago, during a night the pack still spoke of in lowered voices. The Great Purge had ended the line of Moon Queens, or so everyone believed, including Elandra, who had grown up believing her mother's warnings were simply the fears of a woman who had lost too much. But tonight, Elandra was not thinking about her mark. She was thinking about the invitation folded in her coat pocket, the one that had arrived 3 days ago in a wax-sealed envelope bearing the royal crest of the Alpha Kingship. It requested her presence, as a healer of some renown, at the coronation and mating ceremony of Alpha Kale Draven and noble Luna Seraphine Hart. She had almost burned the letter. Instead, she packed a small bag and told herself she was only going because healers were needed at large gatherings, because it was safer to attend than to explain her absence, because it meant nothing at all that Kale's name still made her chest tighten like a fist closing around her heart. The truth was simpler and far more painful. She wanted to see him one last time before she let him go completely. The royal grounds of Kale's kingdom stretched wide beneath a sky heavy with clouds, banners of silver and blue snapping in the wind, above a crowd larger than Elandra had ever seen in one place. She stood near the back with the other healers, her hood low, and watched as Kale walked out onto the ceremonial platform. He looked older than she remembered, though it had only been 3 years. His shoulders carried more weight now, the weight of a kingdom rather than the weight of a young alpha still learning his own strength. When their eyes met across the crowd, just for a heartbeat, something in his expression flickered, like a candle catching wind. Then he looked away, because the woman standing beside him was reaching for his hand. Seraphine Hart was, by every measure, exactly what a kingdom needed in its Luna. She was graceful and composed, raised from birth, to understand alliances and treaties, and the delicate balance required to hold 2 warring packs together. Her family had fought beside Kale's for decades, to end a conflict that had cost both sides too much. Marrying her was not simply Kale's choice, it was his duty, the price of peace, and Elandra understood duty better than most people alive. She watched him take Seraphine's hand before the gathered packs. She watched the elders speak the binding words. She watched Kale, the man she had once imagined a future with, choose someone else, in front of everyone who mattered, and she made herself stay perfectly still, because healers did not cry in public, and queens who did not know they were queens certainly did not either. It should have ended there. The ceremony concluded, the crowd began to disperse into the feast hall, and Elandra told herself she would slip away before anyone noticed her, back to Ashwick, back to the quiet life she had built out of hiding. But the wards noticed her first. It happened without warning. The ancient stones surrounding the royal grounds, silent for as long as anyone could remember, began to hum with a low golden light. The sound rose from beneath the earth itself, a sound like a held breath finally released, and every wolf on the grounds froze at once, ears back, hackles raised, some falling instinctively to their knees as though something ancient had just opened its eyes. The elders were the first to react. An old woman named Marin, who had served 3 generations of the royal family, pushed through the stunned crowd with a speed that seemed impossible for her age. Her gaze swept across the frightened onlookers, until it landed on Elandra, standing near the back, her hood having fallen away in the commotion, her wrist exposed, the crescent mark glowing faintly silver in answer to the wards. Marin's breath caught. "It cannot be," she whispered, though the words carried farther than she intended. The Moon Queen's line was ended. The crowd's attention turned as one, and Elandra felt every eye on her like a physical weight. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear into the trees the way she had once dreamed of doing as a girl, before duty and grief had taught her to make herself small. But the wards continued to hum, brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with her own racing heartbeat, and there was no hiding from what everyone could now see plainly. Kale crossed the platform before anyone could stop him, He said her name the way he used to, softly, like it was something precious he had been afraid to lose. Elandra. She lifted her chin, because there was nothing left to hide behind. Hello, Kale. The feast hall that night was not filled with celebration, but with urgent, hushed conversation. The elders gathered around long tables covered in old maps and older texts, tracing lines of prophecy that had not been spoken aloud in decades. Elandra sat among them, still stunned, still trying to understand how a life she had spent years hiding had unraveled in a single evening. Meryn explained what the younger generation had never been taught. The kingdom's protection did not come from strength alone. It came from an ancient bond between the ruling bloodline and the moon goddess herself, sealed generations ago through the joining of an alpha king and a true moon queen. That bond had weakened after the purge, and the kingdom had survived since then on borrowed strength, on treaties and mating bonds that mimicked the old magic, without truly renewing it. Seraphine's bond with Kale was meant to hold the peace between packs, Meryn said carefully, glancing at the Luna, who sat pale and silent at the end of the table. But it was never meant to restore what was lost. Only a true moon queen bonded to the Alpha King can renew the wards fully. We believed that bloodline gone. We were wrong. Seraphine's hands were folded tightly in her lap. She did not look angry. Not exactly. She looked like someone watching a carefully built structure begin to shift beneath her feet. I did everything asked of me, she said quietly. I was raised for this. I was ready for this. You still are needed, Luna Heart, Meryn said gently, but not in the way we believed. Kale said nothing for a long moment. He looked at Elandra across the table, and she recognized the expression on his face, because she had worn it herself countless times over the last 3 years. It was the look of someone realizing that the life they had accepted was not the life fate intended for them. I need time to think, Kale finally said, and left the hall before anyone could stop him. Elandra found him later that night, on the training grounds behind the castle, alone beneath a sky finally clear of clouds, the moon full and bright above them. He did not turn when she approached, though she knew he had heard her. You should have told me, he said, his voice rough. I didn't know, she answered honestly. My mother never spoke of it as truth, only fear. I thought she was only trying to protect me from a danger that didn't exist anymore. 3 years, Elandra. 3 years I thought you left because you didn't want this life, because you didn't want me. I left because you needed to become the king your people deserved, and I was never going to be the reason you failed at that. Her voice broke slightly, and she hated that it did. Seraphine could give you what you needed, peace between the packs, an alliance that would end a war neither of us could stop on our own. What could I have given you, Kale? A healer with a dead bloodline and nothing to offer a kingdom? He finally turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. You could have given me the truth. I would have found a way. I always would have found a way. Neither of them spoke of what came next, not directly, but the weight of it sat heavy in the space between them. A kingdom's survival now depended on a bond neither of them had chosen freely, forged instead by prophecy and necessity. It was not the reunion either of them had imagined in quiet, private moments over the years. It was something far more complicated, tangled with duty, grief, and a love that had never fully died, no matter how carefully it had been buried. The days that followed brought new dangers. Word of the surviving Moon Queen spread faster than anyone could contain it, carried on the wind by messengers and rumors alike. Rival alphas from distant territories, packs who had never fully accepted peace, saw an opportunity in the chaos. A Moon Queen bonded to their own bloodline would grant them power and legitimacy no treaty ever could. Elandra was no longer simply a healer hiding a secret. She was a prize, and the kingdom's borders, already strained from the weakening wards, offered little protection. Kale doubled the guard around the healer's quarters where Elandra stayed, though she suspected the effort was as much for his own peace of mind as for her safety. She caught him more than once standing outside her door in the early hours, as though unable to fully trust that she would still be there in the morning. It was Seraphine, unexpectedly, who found her alone one evening in the castle gardens, sitting beside a fountain that had gone quiet, its water reduced to a slow trickle as the wards continued to falter. I am not here to fight you, Seraphine said before Elandra could speak. I want you to know that first. Elandra studied her carefully. There was no anger in Seraphine's face, only a tired kind of clarity. I never wanted to take anything from you. I know, Seraphine said, sitting beside her without invitation. I have spent my whole life being told what I was meant to do. Marry well, secure peace, be the kind of Luna the Pax could respect. I was good at it. I believed in it. She paused, looking out at the fading fountain. But I have never once been asked what I wanted. Not until this moment, standing here, watching a bond I built my entire identity around begin to unravel, because it was never truly mine to build. Seraphine. Let me finish, she said, not unkindly. I could fight for what I was promised. I could demand the kingdom find another way, delay the ceremony, search for loopholes in old prophecies. Alphas have done worse for less. But I have watched what a false bond has already cost this kingdom, and I will not be the reason it falls further. If the wards need a true Moon Queen to survive, then I will not stand in the way of that truth, no matter what it costs me personally. Elandra felt something loosen in her chest, something she had been holding tight since the wards first flared to life. That is not a small sacrifice. No, Seraphine agreed, but it is the right one. I would rather lead my own pack with honesty than rule beside a king whose heart was never fully mine. She stood, smoothing her dress, her composure returning like armor settling into place. Take care of him, Elandra. He has loved you longer than either of you were willing to admit. The renewal ceremony took place 3 nights later, beneath the same full moon that had witnessed Kael's first mating bond only a week before. This time, the Pax gathered not out of obligation, but out of genuine hope, drawn by whispers that the ancient wards might finally be restored to their full strength. Kael stood at the center of the platform, and when Elandra walked toward him, she did not do so as the woman he had once set aside for duty's sake. She walked as herself, fully seen for the first time in years, the crescent mark on her wrist bared openly to the crowd, silver light rising from it in soft, steady waves. Kael knelt before her, not as a king reclaiming something lost, but as an alpha, yielding to a truth larger than either of them. I choose you, he said, loud enough for the entire gathering to hear, not because prophecy demands it, but because my heart never stopped choosing you, even when I believed I had no right to. Elandra knelt to meet him, her hands finding his. Then let us build something real, she said. Not a bond born of fear or duty, but one we choose freely, together. The wards responded instantly, golden light spreading outward from where their hands met, racing across the ancient stones surrounding the kingdom, restoring what had been broken for a generation. The fountain in the garden ran full again by morning. The borders, once fragile, held strong against every rival threat that had gathered at the edges. The kingdom, for the first time in decades, stood whole. Seraphine left within the month to lead her own pack in the Northern Territories, carrying with her the respect of everyone who had witnessed her choice. She wrote to Elandra often in the years that followed, and what began as a difficult farewell slowly became an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect rather than rivalry. Elandra was crowned beside Kael, beneath a sky finally clear of the storms that had gathered for so long, no longer a healer hiding in the shadows of a life that was never truly hers to hide. She stood at the center of her own story at last, not as a footnote in someone else's, but as the queen her kingdom had been waiting for all along. And when Kael looked at her that day, there was no hesitation in his eyes, no duty pulling him in a different direction. There was only the quiet certainty of a man who had finally chosen, fully and freely, the life he was always meant to have.